Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 58. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Welcome back to the show this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, we always have a lot to talk about, always a lot on our minds, but we truly have a lot to talk about for this episode. To summarize Tuesday, Pittsburgh waived a 34-year-old cornerback in Darius Slay, claimed a 35-year-old wide receiver in Adam Thielen, and it was Aaron Rodgers' 42nd birthday. And so make of that what you will. So, Dave, they're doing some stuff. They are making some moves. The quality of those moves we'll talk about. But how you doing?
Yeah, it's fun watching the chairs on the Titanic get moved around from a distance and watching these morning sports talking head shows and seeing how many different ways they can phrase the question. Do the Steelers need to fire Mike Tomlin? Well, they've attacked this every different way that they can since the Bills game, obviously here, and big game coming up. The Battle of the Mids. On Sunday at M&T Bank Stadium, where the 6-6 Pittsburgh Steelers will play the 6-6 Baltimore Ravens. And I just went back through the schedules of the three AFC North teams and the Steelers, the Ravens, and the Bengals this morning, and I am kind of wondering, will 9-8 end up ultimately winning the division this year here? So, but yeah, you hit it at the top of the show there. They made a couple of moves, and you kind of detailed them there, and we obviously got the Mike Tomlin press conference from Tuesday to talk about, but I guess we'll dive on into some of the decisions and roster moves made by this team.
And not to send us down rabbit holes, but no 9-win team has ever won the AFC North. It's always been won by a team with double-digit victories. The last time a team won the AFC division in which Pittsburgh plays in was 1990 with 9 wins. And I say that because that was the old AFC Central when the Bengals won it at 9-7 back then. So that would be interesting in itself, especially in a 17-game season. But yeah, Dave, let's just dive on in, kind of recap the roster moves. The most minor move that was made yesterday, a practice squad swap, releasing wide receiver Cornell Powell and bringing back cornerback Daquan Hardy. This is Hardy's second stint with the team, with the receiver group getting healthier, and Skoranek and Metcalf, who battled some injuries during practice last week. Powell became expendable, but I'm sure he'll remain on Pittsburgh's radar. Dave, the writing was on the wall when Darius Slay was made a healthy scratch for the Bills game, that his time was going to be over, and according to reports, there was a mutual agreement to part ways, which I take that as face value. I think that Slay certainly wanted to go keep playing somewhere else, and Pittsburgh realized that there was not going to be a path for him in Pittsburgh, with Asante Samuel signed to the 53-man roster and a corresponding move in place of Slay. So the Darius Slay era over in Pittsburgh, and it was not a fun experience.
Yeah, it like you said, the writing was on the wall when he was a healthy scratch against the Bills on Sunday on the inactive list. That, look, I didn't have a problem with that decision. I was a little bit surprised that Mike Tomlin did do that. I obviously don't think that they missed Darius Slay in that game for sure. The most interesting thing I think about, and look, I put this, I think I said this either on the last podcast or on the live stream the other night that we did on Monday night there. If it were me coming out of this Bills game, I would go ahead and waive Darius Slay. I think I put in there that I would sign Asante Samuel off of the practice squad onto the 53-man roster, and I would go ahead and get MVS Marquez Valdes-Scantling on the 53-man roster as well. But they did two of those things, obviously, in waiving Darius Slay and bringing up Samuel from the practice squad there. And the most interesting thing, I think, related to the Slay thing, and look, it was a 1 year, $10 million fully guaranteed contract. And if there was any reason that you thought maybe the Steelers would not part ways with Darius Slay, especially at this point of the season with 5 games remaining, would be that they would be on the hook for the fully guaranteed portion of the remaining 5 games, assuming he did not get claimed off of waivers. And a reminder that once the trade deadline hits, that all players are subject to waivers, even veterans such as vested veterans such as Darius Slay. Now, when I just double checked, I do it every day. It's a habit when 5 o'clock Eastern hits to check the official NFL transaction sheet, and Darius Slay was termed as a waived with a non-injury settlement. Now,
Mm.
that perked my ears up a little bit. Now, we do not know the specifics of that, other than it is what it states that it is, a non-injury settlement. Logically, what I think perhaps maybe happened, and once again, I'm not 100% sure. We'll find out probably in a couple of days or so. Perhaps Darius Slay agreed to a small settlement as part of his waiving in lieu of the remaining guaranteed money owed him, so that he could potentially catch on elsewhere instead of continuing to be a healthy scratch with this team. That would make a lot of sense. And as far as diving deeper into that, once again, just spitballing here, it would sound plausible that maybe the Steelers and Slay agreed on him just getting maybe his week 14 paycheck, amount, because of him now because now he's got a day tied up today because he's got to clear waivers or not clear waivers. And then if he does clear waivers, go about the process of deciding which team. So yeah, long and short of it, it's unlikely that even if Slay, that Slay will land with a team prior to this weekend's game. So it would make sense that maybe him and his agent, which I think what Drew Rosenhaus and folks over there said, look, give us the week 14 pay and waive us, and we'll agree to nix the guarantees on the final 4 weeks of the season. That would make a lot of sense, especially when it's termed as a non-injury settlement, such as this case here. So does that sound plausible, at least in your head?
Something like that. I assume that kind of disclosure for a veteran is pretty unusual to see. Is that fair to say, that non-injury settlement notation?
You do see it throughout the year, but it's not like you see it from the Steelers, obviously. So you don't really dive down the rabbit hole to go see what happened really elsewhere in that. But it's not common, put it to you that way. So that's what makes me kind of wonder if the two sides, and the report was they both mutually kind of agreed, right? So and we know the Steelers don't like to don't like to waste money, or they like to save money where they can. So it would make kind of sense that, hey, if we could just as easily keep you and you get the rest of this paycheck, but you're probably going to be inactive barring injuries, or Slay saying, look, I've made a lot of money in the NFL. I'd much rather try to catch on somewhere else if I can, maybe make a playoff run with another team here. Why don't you just pay me week 14 money and go ahead and waive me?
Not to get too far down the road, but this really mirrors Adam Thielen's situation in Minnesota. He asked for his release and was granted it on Monday because this is his final NFL season and he wants to go play instead of riding the bench. And that seems to be the case with Darius Slay. Slay understood he was no longer playing in Pittsburgh. There was no path to be in the lineup. And so this is my last season. Slay has essentially confirmed that as well before the year began and said, I want to go play somewhere else and not spend the final weeks of my NFL career sitting in street clothes. So that seems to be a very mirror image of what's happening to Thielen, who now in Pittsburgh, with Slay now somewhere else.
Yeah, let me see how much of now Thielen did not have guaranteed money, I don't think,
Yeah, the
involved in his.
contract is different, but the principle is I want to go play, let
Mhm.
me go and go play, and that seems to be the situation with both these guys.
Yeah, it does, and there was a report the other day when the Vikings and Thielen agreed, to waive him and all, and I think there was a tag on report that he wants to go play for a playoff contender and all. And I guess technically the Steelers do have a shot at still getting into playoffs, obviously. And you dig deeper into this. I was a little bit surprised they claim Thielen off waivers, and we'll get a little bit deeper into that decision and how he fits here in a minute here. But you do dig deeper into this, and evidently Aaron Rodgers and Adam Thielen have a pretty good relationship, although they've never played together on the same team, right? But these two do know each other, and Thielen's a smart guy, should be able to catch the moving train fairly quickly there. And look, he's subject to waivers, so if you get claimed, you got to go, or you get put on the do not, did not report list and all like that. So now, could Adam Thielen turn around and say, "Look, I don't want to be here. I'd much rather go try it again and ask for the Steelers to waive him"? I suppose, but that would look pretty bad. I think on him at this point, considering we're talking about a player here that once again, what is he, 35?
35.
35. He's caught 8 passes this season. So interesting that the Steelers did decide to claim him here. And I guess within that, what do you think about this decision, and what are the Steelers getting in Adam Thielen?
Well, let's go back to Slay. I want to continue the
Okay.
conversation there. I just made the point just to analogize Slay and Thielen situations. What can we learn from the Steelers' obvious mistake of signing Darius Slay? This is a player that had a lot of pedigree, a great career, a relationship, a background with Terrell Austin, Pittsburgh loading up on cornerbacks in an attempt to have a really good top 3 corner trio to be able to combat the top receivers they face in the NFL, especially the Bengals twice a year, with Chase and Higgins getting locked up long term this offseason. That plan has gone completely awry. Slay no longer a Steeler. Ramsey now playing safety permanently, it appears. And James Pierre and Brendan Eccles being some of your best cornerbacks this season. The first lesson is stop signing the over-the-hill veteran cornerbacks. It happened with Patrick Peterson. It happened with Darius Slay. Peterson lasted just 1 season of his 2-year deal. Slay didn't last the full season of his 1-year contract. So you can't have these older, kind of past their prime. Yeah, there's some veteran savvy there. Maybe we can make it work and squeeze the last little bit out of their career with these guys. You got to be fast. You got to be athletic. You can't be really kind of past your prime and rely on that old glory. Pittsburgh has gone down that road a couple times, and it has not worked every single time.
Remember all the posts and all the talks that we had about, especially around free agent time, about Steelers normally shy away from the over 30
Right.
crowd, and
Defensively, especially.
defensively especially, and if they do go down that path, it's usually somebody that's been with the organization previously, right? You go back to, who was it? Willie Williams, I think, was
Yeah, there's
one of the examples, and
James Harrison, part
James
2. I
Harrison.
don't know how if McFadden was 30 whenever he came back in his second act, but yeah, the couple of the act 2s.
Yeah, and especially when you're talking mid-30s, right? You're talking unk category, as a kids, I guess, like to say here. Look, they haven't done a very good job with these older guys in period. You look at the Allen Robinson, and who else can we add on the offensive side of football? There's been a few of them now that just haven't panned out very well. And you look at just defensive backs in general. Yeah, I think there is a little bit of a lesson to be learned there, and perhaps maybe we could see this team go back to kind of their previous seemingly views of over 30, especially on a defensive side of football, and staying away from those guys unless they get them on, minimum value contracts, or something along those lines.
Yeah, not spend the good money they spent on Slay. I mean, Slay seemed like a really good locker room guy, really appreciated his attitude. He didn't have an ego. He was the guy that said, hey, Ramsey wants to go cover number 1s and Porter wants to go kind of fight with him and duke it out for who's going to be the lead cornerback. That's cool, man. I'm going to come in and do my job. So I could appreciate Darius Slay, from a personal kind of level and what he brought to that locker room. And there were a couple of moments in coverage this year that looked okay, but his legs are gone. And when you're a
Right.
corner and you can't run, and Pittsburgh wanted to play a lot of man coverage this year, it's just obviously not going to fit. It's just not going to work. And Slay struggled throughout the season. He was constantly nicked up and would leave games, and it just kind of became frustrating in that sense as well. So it just didn't work on a lot of levels. It kind of became an awkward fit once you realized the plan was, let's go play a lot of man coverage and have this 34-year-old corner try to do that on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and how many missed tackles did he have this season on top of it here? Looking right now at PFF just off the top. Using their stuff, 7 missed tackles, fourth on the team, 16.3% missed tackles. So not only was he a liability in coverage, but liability in the tackling aspect of his game as well too. You could see this train coming a couple of starting, I don't know what, 4 or 5 games ago, right? With him, and especially when you got James Pierre, the better quality of play, at least with Pierre over Slay, and then you fast forward to the decision that they made, obviously on Sunday to make Slay a healthy scratch. It felt like something was going to come to a head with that.
Yeah, Slay's role has slowly been reduced from starter. He was losing out on base reps in 3-4, just playing in sub packages. And then, of course, after being concussed, came back, got cleared, was that backup was at the Bears game, only playing whenever Porter had that hip injury. And then now to a healthy scratch for the Bills game to now a pending free agent once he clears waivers, and he certainly will clear waivers. No one's going to claim this guy, and we'll see if he signs anywhere. I'm not sure what kind of market there would be, what contending team is looking for 34-year-old Darius Slay, but we'll see.
Maybe he goes back to the Eagles. Who knows? But
Yeah, that has been rumored.
yeah, the only real mystery here is figuring out what the details of this non-injury settlement.
All right, Dave, let's go to the other old signing or old move Pittsburgh made. Old and new, I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but the running joke is out with the old and in with the old, because Pittsburgh is claiming 35-year-old wide receiver Adam Thielen off of waivers. He asked for his release from Minnesota on Monday, was granted it, and will now come to Pittsburgh. Thielen has barely played this season, as you said a moment ago, just 8 catches this year, had a more productive season last year in Carolina. I think there's been a little bit of history between Pittsburgh and Thielen in the sense of during last year's trade deadline when Pittsburgh was scouring the earth for wide receiver help. There were some reports and rumors that Pittsburgh was in some level of trade talk with the Carolina Panthers for Adam Thielen. That deal obviously never materialized. Pittsburgh went out and acquired Mike Williams instead, but there was at least some interest that I'm sure remained true whenever Thielen became available this time around. So former 2-time Pro Bowler, obviously a really good career, former undrafted free agent, one of the best stories. He played in Minnesota, went to college in small college in Minnesota, played with the Vikings. So a lot of cool things there. The question is, though, of course, what does he have left?
Yeah, played 185 snaps. It looks like with Minnesota. 8 catches on the season so far. Not a lot of yak at all. He's never been a huge yak guy in the NFL overall. His blocking at this point of his career is suspect from what I witnessed on the tape so far this season. But once again, you're talking about 185 snaps. One of the biggest one of the concerning things here, obviously, is you got a guy here that comes in with only 8 catches. It's going to have to step on the moving train, assuming that you get him in uniform as quick as Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens. How many? What's the reasonable amount of snaps that you can expect him to play, and how would he be used in the offense? I made the joke on Twitter yesterday that I assume that Adam Thielen will be okay catching footballs 9 feet past the line of scrimmage, because that's what that's obviously how it seems like this passing game has gone for the Steelers this year. Not a guy that over the last several years has a lot of 20-plus yard down the field catches. He is a guy that's okay in the middle of the field, make the tough catch for you that way. But the yak, I think he's averaging like, and once again, I think he has 10 yards after the catch this year on 8 catches. And obviously that's a small sample size, but it's 1.25, I think, yards after the catch that he's averaging. And we go back to the common thing that we've talked about all season. This is a Steelers offense that relies a lot on yards after the catch. And so you're talking about a guy I think can still be a 50-50 catch ball, especially in the middle of the field and all like that. But he's a 7 yard in a cloud of dust receiver. I really think I would term him right now. So even assuming you get him on the field on Sunday against the Ravens, I mean, are we talking 8, 10, 12, 15 snaps, somewhere in that neighborhood? And what does he really bring you as far as being able to push the football down the field?
Yeah, he's not going to bring a whole lot for the latter. This is somebody that has that veteran savvy that I think could still run some routes, and Pittsburgh does need a route runner because they really don't have a good quality route runner top to bottom in that receiver room. I think Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin have good release packages. I think Wilson's still working on his route running mid route, as he grows throughout his career. And Austin just really haven't seen that part develop to some super high degree. Now, Thielen, obviously 35 years old, the athleticism, the burst, the snap has really, gone away, but he's a guy looking for a fresh start. He's barely played in Minnesota this season. His snap count has dwindled. Again, that arc with Darius Slay is very similar. He's playing heavy snaps to begin the season. He's played no more than double-digit snaps in every game since week 9. Was a healthy scratch this past Sunday, just like Darius Slay. So I think you're looking for some veteran savvy, a route runner, kind of a different type of receiver in that room, and somebody obviously with a lot of pedigree, a great background. But are you focused on pass returns and not on what he can offer you right now? But this time of year, beggars can't be choosers. There's only so many receivers available, and so I think Pittsburgh understood you can't go pick exactly the type of receiver that you want. You want to try to bring some different flavor to this room, see if it makes things a little bit different. We'll see. I imagine a handful of snaps out of the gate, although we did see Kyle Duggar come in 3 days before, getting traded and then playing all but one snap. Now, that was a more desperate situation where they needed Duggar to play, but we've seen guys catch that moving train, those veterans do so really quickly. So we'll see exactly the role for Thielen, get him in Pittsburgh, and kind of go from there. But just trying to get a different flavor at receiver, I think, was kind of the goal here.
Yeah, and it's almost like the Steelers saying the fan base and the bloggers and the podcasters and media was right. This team needed more help at wide receiver, right? So can you criticize them for at least trying to do something at this point? And can you get mad at the quality of that something?
No, you can't criticize them for trying to do something, but how much is this something going to get you? And there's still a broader point about having a more complete receiver depth chart. I mean, again, I still think if you look at the tape, Roman Wilson has been getting open really routinely, and the ball just has not been getting his way. But obviously, there's a lot of meat left on the bone in that receiver room. Calvin Austin has struggled more in recent weeks, and so this team trying to shake something up with the limited tools at their disposal.
All right, let's tag team this discussion on Thielen together with MVS and all. And I'll tell you what, if they really want to do something different, they'll put both Thielen and MVS in uniform. They would elevate MVS from the practice squad. Now, I thought Jerry Dulac had an interesting report last night that look, I mean, he's inside, I'm outside. So who am I to question his reports? Although his reports over time haven't been stuff to kind of hang your hat on here. He says the move to claim wide receiver Adam Thielen and sign him to the 53-man roster only reinforces what had become apparent. The Steelers are in no hurry to elevate or sign Marquez Valdes-Scantling from the practice squad. Now, first of all, I'm going to push back on this. The part where he says and sign him to the 53-man roster. Well, when you claim a player off waivers, he has to go to your 53-man roster. So there was no decision to sign him to the 53-man roster. When you claim a guy off waivers, he's got to go on your 53-man active roster. So that's punched one hole in it right there. That's why. Yeah. And look, they went into yesterday, I think, one short officially on the 53-man roster. And obviously with the shuffling of Slay and then Asante Samuel and then Adam Thielen, they're at 53 now. I still think that there is a decent chance that you see this team elevate Marquez Valdes-Scantling on Saturday and put him potentially in uniform in addition to Adam Thielen. Now, let's say that does not happen, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, assuming he's not dealing with any kind of injury or whatnot, is not elevated, and Thielen ends up playing. How are you feeling if you're MVS at this point?
Yeah, you wonder what it'll take to get on the field, and you wonder about Pittsburgh's mindset of if we do want to make some changes and try some different people, which they clearly do by adding somebody like Thielen. Then why can't MVS get that opportunity? Thielen's not does not have the MVS skill set, so it's not like they're just finding a better version of MVS. It's the opposite. Thielen's going to work more underneath, and MVS is going to be that more vertical threat, which I think Pittsburgh certainly needs both. They need more route runners to win one-on-one underneath when DK gets doubled. They need guys who can win over the top to stretch this defense and not play in his 10-yard box his passing game has been playing in for most, if not the entire season. So you never know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, how well he's picking things up, and how much the coaches trust him. That has to be earned throughout time, obviously. But yeah, you would like to think that if you're going to try something different, do more than just one kind of minor quote unquote thing with adding Thielen, do more things with MVS and Thielen and scheme and personnel and really kind of shake this thing up, because this thing needs shaken up in a really significant way.
Yeah, and I realize the two receivers essentially have different skill sets here, but you could carve out 8-10 snaps for each of those guys and really shake things up. In my opinion, let me tell you this: if I'm MVS and I don't get elevated and Thielen ends up playing, I'm telling. I'm asking for my release from the practice squad from the Steelers so that maybe I can go catch on with another practice squad of a team potentially. And people are probably saying, what have you really lost there? Essentially nothing. I mean, you got two guys that I think combined have 12 catches this year.
Right. Yeah. MVS has 4 in San Francisco.
I mean, what are the odds that you're going to move the needle with either and or both on the field, moving forward? But the fact of the matter is I want to see this football try to be pushed down the football field more, because this team, is at the bottom of the league in both explosive passing plays and running explosive plays. We're coming out of a Bills game where the average yard per completion was 2 yards past the line of scrimmage. This team has no explosive element to it, and they're so desperate that they're throwing 50-50 balls to Calvin Austin, like we talked about. And as you broke down or put on Twitter, uh, uh, what? Not that you're game planning a lot of what's the biggest thing that you have to take away from the Steelers' offense at this point, but we're seeing DK Metcalf bracketed quite a bit in these games. They don't want DK Metcalf to beat them. They'll take their chances with other wide receivers on the field, and even though Roman Wilson's getting open, he's not getting enough balls in this offense as well too. So if given my druthers, if I had to pick an either or that I would like to see in a uniform and utilized on offense against the Ravens on Sunday, I want to see MVS on the field.
But like you said, why not both? You can do both here. This doesn't have to be an either or type of situation. Hypothetically, not to get too in the weeds about what this could look like, but let's assume that MVS is elevated in dresses for Sunday's must-win game against Baltimore. What does that receiver room look like in total in terms of who's active on game day and who has what role?
Yeah, because you got Keyshawn Williams dressing for games right now. Scotty Miller was a scratch. I would imagine Scotty Miller definitely not going to get a
Sure.
helmet there. But do you need all of those guys active? And look, I mean, we'll see how the injury report, and we'll get into that in a minute, plays out here. Uh, let's assume, and it's dangerous to do on a Wednesday right now, but let's assume both Patrick Queen and James Pierre are both healthy enough to dress and play. We already know that they don't have a backup offensive lineman currently to have inactive, but you do have Will Howard that would be on the inactive list, probably Logan Lee on the inactive list, and Scotty Miller, assuming he does not get moved off the 53, is going to be on the inactive list. And if you were to elevate MVS, you would have to have 6 total inactives for this game. Where do your other 3 inactives come from, especially if you're going to want to dress all of your linebackers and safeties like they did in the previous game against the Bills? It would make sense. It would have to either be a tight end or at least 1 wide receiver, if not 2.
Right. So what other receiver might not dress? It could be Keyshawn Williams, who's just doing kick returns right now. Calvin Austin has taken back and reclaimed the role of punt returner. So that would be, I think, a logical place to start, because obviously Metcalf will dress, Roman Wilson should dress, Skoranek will dress. I still imagine that Calvin Austin would dress, even though the role has diminished to some degree. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you could then sit down Keyshawn for a game. You have to find a new kick returner. Don't know exactly who that would be, but that would probably be the next place to go.
Right.
And then if Pierre can't go, which he's in protocol right now, what is your cornerback depth looking like in terms of if you lost one of these corners? Are you gonna have to do the whole Ramsey go play corner again?
Yeah, that's a great question there. Yeah, because you just obviously just waived Slay. I don't know. Maybe you bring someone up from maybe you have another elevation
Who's
in it.
even there to elevate though?
Yeah.
Am I missing? I mean, you have Hardy you just signed, but he's a slot guy. I'm getting in the weeds here. What
Yeah.
corners are even down there? I mean, Deshaun Jameson. Yeah, they brought him up for one game this year. So, but again, that would also makes you have to have more inactives. Then.
Right. One more inactive on top of it there. So that makes it tough there. So, yeah, we'll have to see what Saturday holds, or really Friday when the final injury report comes out, and see if maybe James Pierre can clear protocol.
So overall thoughts on Thielen here, Dave. What exactly do you think Pittsburgh's trying to accomplish here? Is this mud at the wall? And there should be some clarifying. I think you shared this comment from, I believe his wife had mentioned something on social media that the report was he wanted to play for a contender, but I think she clarified that he just wants to play. Now, I assume he does not want to play for some 2-win team out of the playoff race, Minnesota out of the playoff race. It's probably one reason why he asked for his release, but he simply was not seeing the field. And this being his last season, he does not want it to be spent on the bench. And so he wants to play. And so I imagine maybe Pittsburgh's not ideal, but still a team with a clear path to win the division, difficult as it may be, but clear. It is a very clear path to win the division. He just wants to go out there and play and see the field. So I think he'll be just fine in Pittsburgh in terms of being happy to be with the Steelers.
How do I really feel about this move? It feels like a chair on the Titanic being moved around, along with the ship employees coming out, ship band coming out playing the violins to calm the passengers a little bit. It's not a needle mover, especially being. Now, look, I'd gladly be proven wrong. Two of his 8 catches came against the Steelers earlier in the year over in London, so they got a firsthand look of how he can be used against them. And I think 1 or 2 others came against the Ravens. So, he's already played them once there. If he gets 2 receptions for 13 yards, I'll be pretty shocked, especially in this game. Now, moving forward, we'll worry about moving forward when we see the outcome of this game. But once again, if given my druthers, I would much rather see MVS if it meant Adam Thielen being one of those inactives. How crazy or how uncrazy would that be if you elevated MVS on Saturday and Thielen was one of your inactives?
It really feels like a rudderless ship at that point in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. I know Thielen trying to catch that moving train will take some time and be a learning curve, but a veteran with a full week's worth of practice to come in and get acclimated, he should be able to get a hat for this game the way that Duggar was able to. I mean, I should just kind of be not walk back, but clarify my statement. Thielen's going to play some, but he's not going to play a ton in Pittsburgh, but he'll dress and see the snap, probably, more snaps than he was seeing the last month or so in Minnesota. But obviously, just given the system and the nature of Pittsburgh's scheme, receivers are not used heavily outside the number one. And so you're probably going to get, 10, 15 snaps a game, assuming that you can run your typical 60, 65 and not the 43s.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be what Thielen can look towards in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, because if you only run 50 plays and he plays 10, I think that's 20%, isn't it?
Right. Which feels almost on the high end for a backup Steelers receiver. But we'll see. I think Pittsburgh's just trying to shake things up, get a different flavor receiver, a route runner. I mean, I've always been a big Adam Thielen fan. Like my favorite Adam Thielen fact is his first ever touchdown in the NFL was a block punt for a touchdown. Like he's cut his teeth on special teams. He's run fake punts before as the up back. Like that's how he came out and kind of made his name and then became a really high-end Pro Bowl receiver. He did have some good tape in Carolina last year, so I feel like maybe there's still a little something there, but when you get into those mid-30s, that skill set can diminish quickly, as we've seen with Darius Slay. That thing can fall off in a hurry for those athletic, demanding skill positions, receiver, corner, etc. And so you do wonder kind of what's there for Thielen, but Pittsburgh will take a look.
Maybe he'll give you somebody that can move the chains a couple of times on third down, you know?
They're not using Pat Freiermuth, and so maybe Adam Thielen can be a quasi Pat Freiermuth.
Right. What are your thoughts on the move at its core? It obviously doesn't move the needle much on you, right?
It's a team trying to find a different flavor at receiver, trying to do something with, again, the limited tools they have. There's only so many receivers out there that you can acquire in December. It's not teaming with talent. There's no just go get the type of guy that you want. You got to play the hand that you're dealt here. And Pittsburgh is trying to make a bad hand look a little bit better and trying to have something different to this roster to see if they can get some sort of change and shake up down the stretch for a passing game that looks like among the worst in the NFL, because it is among the worst in the NFL.
Would you indeed elevate MVS and put him in uniform as well?
Assuming he's not completely floundering in practice, yes, absolutely. And that's serving two different, hats there. Thielen and MVS have different skill sets, which is good. If Thielen had the same skill set as MVS, I might say, well, just roll with, Thielen because it's the same thing. But they're two distinct ways in which they win. Now, again, you got to figure out the whole roster and special teams. Neither of those guys are going to contribute there. So you got to kind of go through exactly how this roster is going to look and all that. But yeah, I think you got to shake this passing game up. You got to do something out here that gets you some different results.
Right. And you got to be able to push the football down the field more. Could we end up seeing Jonnu Smith and I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast or on the live stream.
The live stream.
But how plausible is it that Jonnu Smith doesn't get a helmet?
Well, there's no indication of that, considering he's been consistently playing over Pat Freiermuth. If it was me, that would be, I think, part of the consideration, where to make Jonnu Smith healthy scratch for a game if I had to have a spot open. But right now, it's Freiermuth who's barely playing. So if anything, I wrote the article this morning, the proof that Pittsburgh views Pat Freiermuth as a backup on those final 3 offensive snaps against Buffalo. Pittsburgh put in all the backups. Out came Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, and of course Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf and Isaac Seumalo and Darnell Washington and Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth was out there. And so that kind of tells you all that you need to know, that Freiermuth is there with the backups in complete garbage time when all the starters came out.
Right. I posted this yesterday on Twitter, and look, this isn't a hugely illuminating stat because you could, the offense in general obviously has been lackluster all year, but average rushing yards per play with Jonnu Smith on the field, 3.03 yards. Average rushing play with Jonnu Smith off the field, 4.09 yards. So 1.06 increase in average rushing per play when Jonnu Smith is off the field. Now, look, once again, this is just surface statistical 30,000 foot look here. But when you look at when you talk about Jonnu Smith on and off the field in the passing game, when he's on the field, 4.94 yards per pass play, and when he's off the field, another yard difference there, 5.96 when he's off the field there. So Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith can send a Christmas card to me for thanking me for finding an extra yard per play in both the rushing and passing plays here. Look, that it's crude, right? But I mean, it does give a little bit of a snapshot of how basically ineffective Jonnu Smith has been with this team as the overarching thought.
Yeah, it just goes back to your quip of what exactly do you do here? And I can't figure out what Jonnu Smith is doing and providing and furthering this Steelers offense.
Now, do I think Jonnu Smith is a bad player in totality overall? No, because I mean, I don't think he's, we're talking about a guy that if used correctly, we saw what happened last year in Miami, right? 80, 80, unless he's dinged up or something. And look, he is another year older, father time, blah, 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 blah. But this is a guy that, if used correctly, can contribute in a passing game. The problem is that the Steelers are not obviously using him the way Miami used him. So how they have decided to use him in this offense is just not working out, period.
But the confusing thing is he's with Arthur Smith, the guy that knows him better
Right.
than literally any other coach in the NFL, a guy who's had success with Jonnu Smith. And so it makes it all the more confusing of how he's not being
Sure.
used properly in this offense. But even when he's been used vertically, the moments the plays haven't been there, the play action against the Colts, dropped that pass, the missed check on Sunday that should have been a touchdown. So even when given those opportunities, he's not making them. Rodgers missing him on a wide open throw against the Chargers. That was certainly on Rodgers. And so that connection has just not been there the entire season.
Right, right. Now look, has he played a role in his play of not having contributed more? Yes. But uh the over you know the big picture here is he's just not a good fit with what they're trying to accomplish this year in the Arthur Smith offense.
Sure, and it's really blocking Pat Frymuth, who's had this super reserve role and is supposed to be the main receiver, tight end in this offense, a stand-up guy, and that role has been largely occupied by Johnny Smith, who's just not providing to that.
I tell you, on a couple of the run plays, I would have that we saw this past Sunday against the Bills. I would have much rather have Connor Hayward in there on a couple of them. Just not a reliable guy, especially in the blocking department. And look, Pat Fryermuth's not going to go to the Pro Bowl with his run blocking, especially in the line of scrimmage. But I'd much rather have him out there in those situations than I would Johnny Smith. So I'm interested to see if they would even consider sitting down Johnny Smith. Logic tells you that, and probability probably tells you that they would not. But they're not a great team when Johnny Smith's on the field, and they're barely better when he's off the field.
Yeah, still not a great team when he's off the field, but the
Right.
numbers are, you see an uptick in the overall production. Dave, according to Jerry Dulac, Aaron Rodgers turned the big 4-2 yesterday, and for his birthday, he got Adam Thielen, also got his teammates over to his house to watch film, according to Jerry Dulac. And so that's been a hot topic, with Rodgers talking about a film study and maybe hinting that some guys weren't there. I still can't quite make heads and tails of exactly the point Rodgers was trying to make, but players went over. Apparently Ben Skoranek brought a cake, and they all sang happy birthday to him, but a great gift will be getting a win on Sunday against Baltimore.
Yeah, I wonder who all. I wonder if there was 100% attendance there.
Yeah, we don't know. Dulac said the skill guys, receivers, running backs, tight ends went over. I don't know if every single one went over. Schedules are busy. That is the players' day off on Tuesday, but I would like to think it was pretty well attended. I'm sure Rodgers would have asked about that today.
Yeah, I would wonder. I would hope that today Aaron clarifies the film session comment from the other night.
I imagine it'll get brought up. It's about if the reporter asks about it, but I would hope and I would like to think that there's some clarification there. Are these mandatory meetings or these informal meetings where you just saying everybody show up, just kind of talking about the process, or was that a thin veil comment about somebody not showing up? Again, it felt too messy of a comment for me to really get confidence in evaluating and analyzing what he was saying.
All right. Happy birthday, Aaron Rodgers.
All right. And then Asante Samuel officially on the 53. You would imagine, certainly if James Pierre can't go, then Samuel will be starting against Baltimore.
Right. And then the question becomes, what do you do behind him, which we asked earlier in the show. That will probably pan out by Saturday.
Speaking of injuries, Mike Tomlin held his usual Tuesday press conference yesterday and went through the health of this team. He called Derek Carman out again with the knee injury. We do not know the nature of the knee injury, but severe enough for him to be ruled out on Tuesday in back-to-back weeks. And so that is a very discouraging sign and a big blow, given how valuable his run defense has been, and to play the correlation game that you played with Jonnu Smith. When Derek Carman has missed time in 3 games this year, Pittsburgh's run defense has allowed almost 600 yards on the ground, 4.6 yards per carry, and 5 rushing touchdowns and now must step up against a Baltimore Ravens rushing attack. Derrick Henry and company. James Pierre in concussion protocol, as Tomlin outlined post-game, so he'll have to clear that to have a chance to come back. Bumps and bruises elsewhere. Rodgers probably limited early in the week here, but should play in this game along with others who are kind of dealing with some ailing stuff. But Harmon out, Pierre questionable, Patrick Queen also questionable. It's a glute injury officially per Tomlin, and so I think Pierre and Queen, the names to watch during the week.
Yeah, I imagine Patrick Queen's getting some time in the tub this week, right? Hopefully.
It was a weird injury, too.
Yeah.
He just kind of stepped wrong. Like, nobody really even contacted him. He kind of planted his right foot and then just went down.
All right. I'll have to find a clip of that. I don't think I saw that one. Maybe you have it pulled. But anyway, you definitely want to have, if at all possible, those three guys on the field on Sunday, because not having Derek Harmon is a huge thing here, especially when you go back to the playoff game last year and the commentary after that about, man, we got to make sure we shore up the middle of that defensive line so we don't have what had happened against the Ravens the last time happen again. And you get the Ravens down. I thought it was interesting, kind of parlaying into some of the things that Mike Tomlin had to say about, you coming off of a game where you gave up the yardage that you did to the Bills on the ground, and the differences between the two running backs there. And yeah, look, I mean, you had a running back last week that was agile, that could bounce it outside against you, whereas you got a running back in Derrick Henry that we've talked about several times, is a downhill runway type of runner. So even though James Cook does have the power to run inside, he is the good kind of guy that can kind of press and make a cut and either bounce things outside or cut, press and cut and find a gap that way. Whereas Derrick Henry is just going to try to bulldoze you and hopefully have a clean runway. The thing that you obviously want to do with Derrick Henry is make him stop or shuffle his feet a little bit so he does not get that head of steam. Regardless, it's tough not having Derek Harmon in the middle of that defensive line, especially when you see. Yeah, I thought Y.A. Black played okay overall in this game. I thought Cameron Hayward played a pretty good game overall. Was probably one of your best defensive players, if we're being honest, in this game against the Bills. But the rest of the cast of characters, if you will, were very poor up front.
Yeah, I've been in the weeds all episode here, but I wonder what that backup defensive line room will look like. Can Logan Lee get one last chance? I thought Martin Rhodes really struggled in this game, but it was his first time out. He hasn't played in regular season game in a while, and he's got more probably true backup nose tackle value than what Logan Lee offers. Lee has played nose tackle a bit in the past, but it's been miscast there in his rookie preseason year. So could they dress all those guys, but then just start running out of available hats to have? But I wonder if there could be a shakeup there. I thought Otomewa played okay. I liked his energy, kind of held the point of attack acceptable at an acceptable level, but he also got that personal foul late in the game, and they pulled him from that. So I wonder if there could be a swap there as a lesson of we can't have these dumb penalties, especially in an emotional game coming up when you have Steelers and Ravens.
I'll tell you what, if a big component of how well you do against this Ravens offense comes down to how well either or Broderick Martin Rhodes or Logan Lee plays, or Otomewa for that matter, you're in for a long day.
Fair, but these are guys who are going to be playing 10, 15, 20 snaps in this game, and they have to be quality snaps. You can't have the sort of drop-off when these guys are in there. Like it or not, they have to play. And it's going to be a physical attrition type of game. And so you better have the right guys out there that can give you the best chance to go out there and give you, quality, serviceable snaps.
And that is what has me worried.
Right. So I wonder how that's going to look. I wonder what schematically Pittsburgh will do, but maybe we'll talk about that more come Friday, especially once we get more clarity on the health of this team. Mike Tomlin speaking again and opened up about the emotions of this Bills game, and a lot of guys letting emotions get to them. We kind of touched on that during the Monday show. Cam Hayward kind of riding that emotional roller coaster. Patrick Queen post game taking to social media to call out Trey Essex, and Tomlin noted that two of your personal foul penalties came from captains, one from Cam Hayward and one from Peyton Wilson, who is the special teams captain replacing Miles Killebrew. And so you have guys doing some really dumb stuff in this game. DK Metcalf had one as well. So you just had a lot of these kind of leaders that were not showing leadership. And again, emotions will be high against Baltimore. They always are. And so controlling them will be key per Tomlin.
Yeah, obviously you hate to see the frustration that lead to penalties, but the Steelers did not lose this game because of a couple of personal fouls.
Well, I think no, you're right. But the overall mindset is Pittsburgh was riding that emotional wave.
Sure.
And that's not always reflected just in penalties, but is your head in the game? And it felt like this team was just not even focused because they were just getting so pissed off.
Right. And you could see the confidence really kind of wane. And we talked about that last Josh Allen. I mean, that last Josh Allen touchdown and all just barreling in from as far out as he was there. It's kind of reflective of the frustrations.
Should also note from a health standpoint, Rodgers is improving, really, is what Tomlin said. No worse for wear from with a wrist injury, and that he could start taking snaps under center this week. And that was something he did not do against Buffalo. Pittsburgh ran exclusively pistol and shotgun, and so they may be able to get more under center work for this weekend.
All right, we'll see. I still imagine most of his snaps are going to be either pistol or shotgun.
Rodgers also said post-game about a really bad week of practice. He wasn't happy with the quality of work there. Tomlin was asked about, are you considering making any practice changes? And Tomlin said he is open to it. Also, Rodgers made the comment that maybe practicing in the cold had this team tight and just not giving their best work. And so Tomlin was asked, would you consider moving to the indoor facility even whenever there is no significant elements outside, whenever it's just cold outside, as it is all week this week in Pittsburgh? And Tomlin said he prefers to practice outside, practice how you play in the same elements. But if it's so counterproductive to where practicing outside is harming this team, he certainly would consider moving inside. So I guess we'll see today if they're practicing on the outdoor field or the indoor facility.
Unless we have like snow lightning or cold winter lightning or whatnot, a twofer. I break out the Jim. What was that? What was Jim Cantori talking about? Was it that thunder lightning or
thunder snow? Thunder snow, they call it.
Yeah,
there's rare times when snowstorms get so bad there is thunder.
All right. Unless we have some thunder snow in Pittsburgh, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they practice outdoors this week, all every day.
Yeah, it's going to be cold. What is the weather in Pittsburgh? We got a bunch of snow yesterday. There's I think a little bit of snow coming in later this week. We had a couple inches in Pittsburgh yesterday. It's going to be in the low 30s, high 20s. So we'll see. Maybe they get one indoor session. I don't know. But we'll certainly be able to tell based on the reporters' videos and commentary.
Right. We'll know real quick.
Tomlin asked about the identity of the team, gets asked about this a couple times a year, and he says it's 6-6, and I don't like it. And so he always kind of reflects on record being what you are. And Pittsburgh is a team that's not just 6-6, but they're 2-4 in their last 6 games. 4-1 start. So a team that is fading again.
Well, dadgummit, that means John Harbaugh doesn't like his identity right now either, right?
Yeah, I imagine nobody in the AFC North likes their identity. And speaking of the North, by the way, the Browns have opened the 21-day practice window for Deshaun Watson. So is there a chance Pittsburgh could see Deshaun Watson late this year? Probably not. I imagine Shedeur is going to be the guy if he keeps playing okay football. But interesting note there on Deshaun Watson. Tomlin was also, again, asked about the fans chanting to fire him and just his overall thoughts on that. And he started with, in general, I agree with them, which kind of made for a funny response to, should you be fired? And then he says,
while grinning pretty much ear to ear.
Yeah. And I don't think he was agreeing on that particular point. He says, quote, football is our game. We're in the sport entertainment business. And so if you root for the Steelers, entertaining them is winning. So when you're not winning, it's not entertaining. If you've been in this business, you understand that. And so I respect it. I share frustrations. I understand what makes this thing go. And winning is what makes this thing go. All sounds good on a bumper sticker, a very long bumper sticker, but the results have to be there. Tomlin knows that, and we shall see. But again, I have the point that even if Pittsburgh beats Baltimore this weekend, which would be a big win, the fan base is still out on Tomlin, and they will just assume that the shoe will drop at some point later this season.
I don't know. What would 51-0 do?
If you get an 89, Browns game score in Pittsburgh's favor, maybe a little bit different. But I still think that even if you win a squeaker against Baltimore, which is how these games always go, they're close, team wins in the final moments, it's going to be just, well, yeah, they won this game, but they're going to lose to the Lions. Or, yeah, maybe they win the division, but they're going to get bounced in the first round. So same old Steelers. I think the fan base has truly turned on Mike Tomlin. Now, if you'd go on some sort of crazy playoff run, then maybe you can try to win them back. But I felt a real shift really throughout the season, but markedly so
This
during and
last
after
week.
this Bills game. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Look, if they beat the Ravens on Sunday, I'm not going to have an emergency Zoom with you, Ross and Joe, about, well, what does this maybe do to potential Steelers getting in the playoffs and how it impacts all-star games and and all like that. I'm going to have to see a little bit more than barring a 51-0 shutout of the Ravens. Going to have to see a little bit more.
And this game means so much. And I wrote about this
Mhm.
even before the Bills game, that really Pittsburgh and Baltimore were playing for just one playoff spot, the 4 seed. There really is no other path for the team who does not win a division to make the postseason based on how things look right now and the projections of how things are going to go in the future. And so I think there's a stat about playoff leverage in terms of, the winner of this game basically has a 75% chance to make the playoffs. The loser of this game has about a 25% chance. That's the biggest swing of any matchup this weekend. So it truly is Pittsburgh and Baltimore playing for just this number 4 seed to win the AFC North. The loser is almost guaranteed to go home.
Well, I'll take the Troy Aikman response here. The analytics people say the Steelers, if they win this game against the Ravens, will have a 65% chance of making the playoffs. And if they lose this game, the analytics people, analytics will tell you he hates analytics,
He
doesn't?
does. He's a
Uh,
90s quarterback, yeah.
yeah. If the Steelers lose this game, they have an 18% chance of making the playoffs. And according to Evan Kaplan from ESPN Sports Info and analytics, they have the largest potential swing of 7 teams whose playoff chances will swing by at least 25% or more with a win or loss in week 14. So, this goes back to what we say every year, which is a Captain Obvious thing. I think when it comes to any team in any division, divisional games really could make or break you. And it feels like the Steelers obviously need to go 4-2 to me within the division the rest of the way. 4-2 in totality. Obviously, you got 2 games against the Ravens, 1 against the Browns. It feels like 3 wins out of those 3 games are going to be a necessity for them to get into the playoffs overall. Now, are there paths otherwise? Obviously, yes. And once again, I looked at all the 3 schedules of the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Bengals again this morning of the 5 remaining games for each. I'm beginning to wonder if 9-8 might win this division, Alex. And if the Steelers were to get to 10 wins, obviously they'd have to go 4-1 the rest of the way. But if you're going to pick out that one loss, I would think it would probably have to be against the Detroit Lions, the out of conference game there. 3-2 might get you in these final 5. And I really like the chances if those 3 wins were come against 2 against Baltimore and 1 against Cleveland. If you split with Baltimore, you beat Cleveland, and you only get one other win, and you're 9-8. I think you become at mercy of what other teams do there, obviously including the Ravens, who have a pretty tough schedule. I mean, it's not a must-win game, but once again, it's one that you're going to really 18%, no matter how you look at it, tells you that you're going to need help, not only from yourself but other teams the rest of the way.
I'll call it virtually must win. It may not mathematically be so to that exact 100% degree, but if you lose this game, Baltimore has clear control. It's another loss for Pittsburgh. They're 3rd in a row. The season continues to spiral. The confidence gets even lower. The heat, the intensity, the scrutiny raises all the more. I just don't see it if they lose this game to the Ravens. What is the second tiebreaker if the season series does split and their records are identical? Is it divisional plays? I think the next tiebreaker, Pittsburgh and Baltimore, both 2-1. right now. So that second Ravens-Bengals game could mean a lot in terms of the Ravens' divisional record for any potential tie-breaking purposes.
Yeah, you'll get that in week 15, the rematch of that.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. So that'll be something to certainly watch. But obviously,
To break a tie within a division with two
Mhm.
clubs head to head first, obviously. So if they were to split, you'd go to the next one. Best one lost tied percentage in games played within the division. So obviously, division record would come next, and then the next one would be best one lost tied percentage in common games.
And that's why Baltimore is currently ahead because they have a better common game. We did that math. I think they're 5-2 in common games, and Pittsburgh 4-3. Every AFC North team has a negative point differential. Incredibly, not the only division to have that. The NFC South also has negative point differentials across the board, but they also have two teams with 7 wins. The AFC North, the only division that has the leaders at just 6 wins. And you're right, it is certainly not a stretch to believe that 9 wins will get you the division, maybe off a tiebreaker, but 9-8 is probably the most likely way to win the AFC North. 10-7, is probably less likely outcome for either of these teams, Ravens or Steelers.
10-7 should definitely get you in, though, right?
Yes, but is Pittsburgh going to win 4 of the last 5? Is Baltimore going to win 4 of the last 5? Baltimore probably has a better chance of doing that than Pittsburgh does, but 9 wins is probably what you're aiming for. Maybe 9 wins in help in terms of tiebreaker, but that's the most likely path.
And look, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here with 5 games remaining, but I'm going to go down it anyway here. The Ravens have 2 against the Steelers, 1 against Cincinnati in Week 15 that everybody's going to be watching. They play the Patriots in Week 16. Is there a hotter team in the NFL right now than the New England Patriots? And Green Bay Packers in Week 17, and Green Bay could be playing for their playoff life as well at that point. Then obviously you end the season at Pittsburgh there. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Ravens don't run the table in their final 5 games. They could potentially go 3-2 as well too, which puts them at 9-8.
Is that Packers game at Lambeau or at home? Is that in Baltimore?
It's at Green Bay.
Okay, so yeah, tough way to end that, going back-to-back road games for the Ravens. All right, back to Tomlin. Any other final thoughts or any other comments from Tomlin? Go ahead.
Alex, will Mike Tomlin make any adjustments to the responsibility of his coaching staff?
Nothing significant enough to talk about in this setting for Mike Tomlin. So not exactly the most straight answer in the world, but no firings are coming. Could there be any sort of tinkering behind the scenes? I guess Tomlin left that door open. His exact quote was, "Not anything that merits discussion in this setting, no," end quote. I guess we'll keep an eye on, is Terrell Austin still calling some plays? We kind of get those cutaways sometimes, but no big changes were coming, which I didn't expect ever to happen this time of year.
All right, and what about the Bills running that same play 56 times on the ground against the Steelers?
Tomlin tipped his hat and said they did a good job executing. He tried to say they kind of dressed it up with changing personnel. They really did not do much of that. I mean, they were doing some sort of 12 out of 11, but I mean, it was literally go watch 14 Shavers do the same kind of return motion over and over and over again. It was, I mean, literally have the one club of Pittsburgh putting like 5 people on the right side just to try to stop it and do something to combat it. So it was pretty clear what Buffalo was doing. They really weren't hiding much of it, and Pittsburgh just could not stop it.
Yeah, I mean, they and you laid out, I think, listed all the different kind of personnel groupings that they used in that to try to stop it.
They used everything. I mean, it was not for a lack of trying or for a lack of imagination or scheme. I do think the personnel was just more the issue in this game. I think scheme was more the issue, say, against the Bears. This one, Pittsburgh just could not get stops. They couldn't get off of blocks. They couldn't set the edge well. They couldn't play assignments down. They could not get vision on the football. I mean, just a variety. Every issue possible was evident, from a individual standpoint in this game, and why Buffalo ran for 249 on Pittsburgh.
All right, and here's the hoping they don't break that record on Sunday against the Ravens. They're going to have their hands full, obviously, with Derrick Henry. We'll see if they can pull a Indianapolis Colts game out of their hat here. All right, what else from Mike Tomlin hit you? Anything?
I think that was basically it. I don't think there was anything else there to discuss.
All right.
And let's get to the All-22 review of this game. And like Mike Tomlin said, I'm sure, Dave, your reaction is it was not any prettier or really any different watching the game on the All-22 versus the TV tape.
I don't know what side of the ball you want to talk about. It's pretty easy to talk about both of them overall there. I mean, you look at just those 20-something running plays with the success and both backs really, Cook and who was the other one?
Ray Davis.
Yeah, Ray Davis. Both of them had success in that thing overall. And look, you already hit on it on those running plays there. They either weren't gap sound, they weren't setting the edge, or if they were in the right places, they weren't getting off blocks there. I think 10 of the 15 missed tackles in that game came against the run overall there, so that's not helping out things. A lot of bodies falling forward, even when most of the time they were able to limit the run. Having the run success that they had, obviously, stopped the Bills from having to pass all that much. But and while Josh Allen wasn't overly, from a completion percentage, effective in the passing game, when he did hit, he hit for pretty decent amount of yardage there. They obviously did get burned down the field a lot, but then you see the busted coverage in the end zone there. Where you have three guys on one and two guys, or actually three guys, I guess, wide open on that play. And the other score, obviously, was Josh Allen rushing it in from, what was it, 7-8 yards out, just basically bulldozing everybody. You could not you couldn't get pressure on Josh Allen consistently enough, and whenever you did, you could not bring him to the ground. And he used his feet a couple of times, very, very effectively, that were moved the chain, or at least ahead of the chain type scrambles there. And I think that's it. Thanks for coming on that side of the ball.
Other than that, they were great, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I thought Hayward played a good game, top to bottom. I thought Alex Highsmith, for the most part, played a pretty good game, but outside of that, there really wasn't a lot to talk about as far as plus performances.
Herbig and Echols, I would also give us a little bit of credit to, I think, for playing, making some plays in this one. Echols, especially in coverage. But yeah, they couldn't get off of blocks. They were too chest to chest. They weren't playing with good technique. I think they also just didn't have vision on the football, because they're A, getting kind of sucked into these blocks and they can't find the ball, or they're just bad with their eyes, not getting good vision on it, whether that's on the edge by Porter, whether that's, I thought Y.A. Black struggled early, got even, against Jackson Hawes, so he was even having some bad reps there. He got better throughout the game. It was kind of improving and learning from mistakes, which was encouraging to see, but you just can't get off of blocks. You can't get vision on the football. They weren't great tackling. It wasn't the number one issue why Buffalo ran all over Pittsburgh. They did some decent tackling on the edge at least, but when you combine all those factors, you're just going to play really bad run defense, and they certainly did.
And let's face it, the first half, they obviously, 7-3 at the half, right?
Pittsburgh led, yes.
Right. Mike Tomlin said, we played 30 minutes of acceptable football, and then we didn't do what we needed to do in the third quarter in any phase of the play. Look, they survived the first 30 minutes. That's the way I look at it here. And I say that because we talked about the 3 false start penalties that Buffalo had in the first half of that game, and then them shooting themselves in the foot with the 2 turnovers. Josh Allen putting a ball he had no business throwing right into the breadbasket of Echols, and then congratulations on James Cook on forcing a fumble.
Yeah, that one was certainly a little bit more the fluky variety. It was good run defense, though. Hayward spilled it, and Herbig set the edge, and so I think, give Pittsburgh some credit there, but I get your point. Overall, Pittsburgh, I'm going to write about this for the morning, so I'm kind of spoiling my own article, so please go click on it in the morning all the same. But Pittsburgh has blown 4 halftime leads this season. They are 5-4 this season when they enter the half with a lead. Those 4 losses already tie a single season franchise record for the most number of games lost in which Pittsburgh led at the break. That ties 2009 and 1984. So if Pittsburgh does it one more time this year, they will set a franchise record.
All right. One interesting note too, I forgot to add about the whole Adam Thielen thing. You've got you a candidate now to become the 11th player to catch a touchdown pass this season, which would set a new franchise record. Am I correct?
You would be correct. They're currently tied at 10 with the 2017 season. On paper, if you had told me, hey, 11 players might catch a touchdown pass this year, Dave, that could set a record. You'd be like, hey,
Woohoo!
the offense must have been pretty awesome this year. And yet, here we are.
And I posted the complete receiving stats of this team through week 13 yesterday afternoon on Twitter. And two running backs are in the top four when it comes to leading this team in receptions.
Kenneth Gainwell, one reception behind the leader in DK Metcalf. So, how about that?
All right. Switching over to the Steelers on the offensive side of football. First and foremost, you run 43 plays and you had no long catch and runs or anything involved in that. It basically became, can you 3 yards in a cloud of dust them to death? And the answer, the narrator says, no, you cannot.
Why was the run game so bad? Even it was limited opportunities, but even on the chances they got, they really did not run the ball well. Was there any commonality that you saw?
The Bills weren't respecting the pass game other than doubling bracketing DK. They were run blitzing early off the edge with the corners. No respect there. They were filling their gaps a lot better. You saw a couple of times offensive linemen on the ground. That's never going to cut it. You have whiffs by DK Metcalf. You have DK Metcalf getting off the ball slow on a couple of times. It's just you did not up front, there weren't a lot of perfectly blocked situations there. When you did have those, you did have your 12-yard Warren run, your 11-yard Gainwell run there. But once again, this is a team that even when you're getting these 12, 11, 13, 14-yard runs, which technically you could say are explosive runs in the NFL, you're not getting anything more than that, and you're getting a low volume of those 10+ yard runs. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to nickel and dime your way down the field. You're trying to get in very manageable second and third down situations and then trying to move the chains that way. And any negativity that you get on offense whatsoever, the entire wheels come off. And they were 3 of 9 on third down in this game. That's 33%, whereas the Bills were 8 of 15 in this game, which was obviously over 50% in this game. And you're not staying on the field, sustaining drives. 43 plays, man. Hope Tom enjoyed his week off.
I'm sure he did. It was a quick watch for this offense. I think the individual reel for Pittsburgh's offense was like 27 minutes, if that, which is really well, it's usually in the 30s for any offense, but that's how many, how little plays were run in this game. I think Pittsburgh's offensive line has grown. I've largely been happy with the trend that they're on, but they're still not a super physical road grading type of a group. And part of that might be the outside zone system that's a little more finesse. I'm sure Arthur Smith would say you can still be physical in outside zone, and you can be, obviously, but it's not exactly this super take it to you type of impose your will group. It's a little more athleticism and getting to a spot and that kind of stuff. So if there is a critique of the run game, is a critique of the offensive line globally, you'd like this group to be a little more physical. There were moments of that in power. Like they ran one kind of pin and pull with Maul getting a pancake out in space. So you've seen some moments of that, but it's not exactly the most intense physical offensive line in football.
Yeah, it pops up like popcorn occasionally, but obviously not enough to fill a movie theater, Ben, when it comes to that. And as far as the passing game goes, look, at least they tried to push the football a little bit more down the field, although you only had 24 pass attempts in totality here. The average yards per attempt down the air yards per attempt was over 5. Which at its core doesn't sound like a lot for Steelers offense. That's pretty big improvement.
It's the Ritz cracker.
Yeah. Yeah, but the problem is once again that your average yards per completion were 2 yards down the field, and I keep going back to look. Yeah, I think Calvin Austin has a role with his skill set, the way he can be used and all, but 50-50 balls to Calvin Austin, he's going to lose more times than not. It's just size and leaping ability. It's not in his wheelhouse there. And when you have DK Metcalf bracketed, and when you have a quarterback that's missing throws on a mesh to Metcalf, to Johnny Smith, and going to Metcalf for what 4 or 5 yards, whatever that one
It
was.
was incomplete.
Yeah, okay, incomplete. Yeah, that was right. That one fell incomplete there. And then you you wonder what if this offense would have scored any points in totality had Gainwell not made that catch of that poor pass on that swing escort route there. So yeah, you had a couple of positive moments with Darnell Washington in the game, but outside of that, that was it.
Also, on that incompletion to Calvin Austin, you had the Bills playing two-man, which you don't get a lot in the NFL these days, but you're getting true cover two-man with a two-deep shell and cornerbacks playing trail technique underneath. So it just sits there and says, you guys can't shake our man coverage. We're going to keep a lid on things over the top, have corners underneath, and you guys aren't going to break free, and nobody did on that play. If it wasn't one thing, it was the other. If it was receivers not making plays, it was quarterbacks not finding them, missing plays, missing core concepts. I mentioned before, you're missing easy day one install type of concepts, poor read on the mesh concept. It was, I think it's called it Hank on Monday. It was a snag concept that Rudolph skipped to DK Metcalf. He had the bad ball from Rodgers to Wilson. I mean, it just, the missed check by Jonnu Smith. So if it wasn't one thing, it was the other. Receivers, quarterbacks, no one elevating each other, no one making a play. And also, not that this is the biggest problem, but I don't like how Pittsburgh works in scramble drills. I don't feel like the effort's there to get open. I think Roman has good effort. I think he does a good job. I think Calvin tries, but is not always on the same page of where Rodgers wants him to be. But I think overall, the group certainly needs to work harder when Rodgers does extend these plays and start scrambling around. Guys really aren't finding grass, getting open, working hard, getting away from leverage. And it just kind of feels like everyone stays pretty bottled up and there's nothing there for Rodgers to throw to.
Yep, agreed. And look, and catastrophic to. I mean, they had 14 points off of turnovers. The Bills did, right? You had the sack, scoop, 6, and then they scored a touchdown off of after the interception of Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that point. Because Pittsburgh allowed points off of every turnover against the Bears too, right? I think Pittsburgh's been really bad in those sudden change moments, which are difficult, but you would expect this defense, and Pittsburgh has shown it in the past, to bow up in those moments and limit teams whenever those turnovers do happen.
Let's see here. Interception against the Bills turned into a touchdown. You turned it over on downs. That one ended up in a touchdown. You had a fumble turnover that turned, every turnover turned into touchdowns eventually for the Bears in that game as well too.
Yeah, no, obviously in the Bills game, the sack fumble touchdown is not the
Right.
defense's fault, but what about, when was the last time Pittsburgh got a stop off of a turnover?
All right.
Pittsburgh did not turn the ball over against the Bengals, so that was not an instance. Well, we can skip that game. They had 3 against the Chargers, 3 giveaways. What were the results on those 3 giveaways?
All right. Let's see here. All right. Missed field goal. Do you consider that a turnover?
No, it's not a turnover.
All right. They got a field goal off that anyway. Interception. They got a touchdown off of that turnover. Interception later on in the fourth quarter. They did not get any points, and the muff punt they got a field goal off of. So you have to go back to fourth quarter against the Chargers after the interception where they did not give up points off a turnover.
Yeah, those sudden change moments, Pittsburgh not rising up, so the defense struggling in yet another aspect of this season.
All right, let's go back one game further here against the Colts.
The Colts was Porter picking off that pass after Roman fumbled. That was the only turnover Pittsburgh had. So they did get a stop in that moment.
All right.
But not good as of late. Any other final thoughts here? The kick return team really bad. Thought Chuck Clark struggled blocking, but Pittsburgh has really given them nothing in terms of good field position in the return game.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see if Keyshawn gets a helmet for the various reasons we talked about earlier in the show when it comes to him. But they could use their special teams making an impact in this game against the Ravens for sure. Mike Tomlin even said, special teams such a big component of Ravens Steelers, blah blah blah. We'll have to see how that goes, but it feels like they're going to have a couple of huge special teams in this game against the Ravens to win it.
No doubt. All right, Dave, any other final thoughts?
No, we can get to some of these angry emails, I guess.
All right, let's do that and close out today's show.
Go to some people we haven't heard from maybe in a while. Mike Shorter writes in, happy holidays. I previously emailed to show that this team was progressing. I need to get my head rechecked. He says, how would you rate Omar Khan so far, and should a new GM be considered? Given his role in the latter stages of the Colbert era, I don't think he deserves leeway for finding playmakers Tomlin likely wanted.
Yeah, again, in terms of evaluating these things, I kind of let the season finish before I kind of start thinking about evaluations. It can be tough to evaluate a GM, especially with the dynamic in Pittsburgh of knowing Tomlin has so much kind of sway and influence. I think there's been a good vision for Khan to try to chart the course of let's build up the trenches, and obviously Andy Weidel has a big impact in that from Philadelphia and Baltimore, and his background as a former college offensive lineman and his early days in Pittsburgh, and drafting Alan Faneca and all that. So I think there's been a vision. I think if you look at Khan in terms of the draft class, not that he's the sole guy bringing in these people, obviously, but we're more apt to judge GM off of draft picks than probably anything else. The picks have largely been good, but obviously the results are the results. So I don't have a great thought of what grade I would give him now. I haven't given that really any specific thought. I think there's been a worthwhile vision. I still think the team is obviously falling short of really completely fulfilling that and executing that and getting this team to go in a different direction, which really was what Khan's goal was. Can you get this team out of kind of the rut they were in? And the bottom line is they have not, and they all have to wear that.
Right. And look, obviously fingers are going to continue to point even harder at him if this team doesn't make the playoffs, or if this team does make the playoffs and does not get a win. Could you see any kind of scenario that if this winds up for whatever reason, firing, trade, step down, whatever, when it comes to Mike Tomlin, if Mike Tomlin, however it happens, is out after this season, could you see a scenario where Omar stays?
Yeah, I could. I mean, Pittsburgh has not changed head coach and GM at the same time since ever, technically, because they really didn't have a GM, even a de facto GM, until like the 70s, I guess. When Tomlin, was hired, Colbert obviously stayed. When Donahoe lost the power struggle and Colbert was brought in, Cowher stayed, obviously. So, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of far down the road. I don't know how exactly that would look. But Khan just got his extension this past summer, didn't he? So I don't think Khan's going to be on the chopping block. So I would imagine that Khan, and I don't know exactly what would happen to Andy Weidel, but I imagine there wouldn't be a change there if a new head coach was brought in.
All right, Ben Hallam writes in, hi, Dave and Alex. Ben from Cambridge, England. I've been a Tomlin apologist for many years. Listening to that man talk makes me want to run through walls for him. I have loved his coaching staff, and I've scoffed all of this fire Tomlin talk over the last number of years. However, it really feels like a turning point now. Given that we have so many picks in the upcoming draft, surely this offseason is the best possible time to clean house and get a new head coach, OC, and DC, rather than waiting a year and having the new head coach inherit a large draft class from Tomlin. In your opinion, who is out there that might step in to replace Tomlin? We kind of went through a handful of names and all in the live stream the other night. Why don't you recap those? And look, we haven't given obviously a lot of thought and within that, but I think we named three decent potential candidates should we even get to this point where this team's looking for a new head coach.
Yeah, I've really spent very little time considering it. Monday's live stream was the first time I kind of rolled through some names, and this year's pool is not regarded as a good class. I think you're going to see some weird names get looks, not just from not Pittsburgh, if Tomlin stays, obviously, but just around the NFL, because there is no can't miss candidate, and there's really not even a list of names you could sit there and say, well, they're going to be a head coach somewhere next year. It's a really kind of completely jump ball. But Jesse Minter, the DC with the Chargers, Jeff Hafley, the DC of the Packers. Some will say Clint Kubiak, the OC in Seattle. And then I think a real interesting name that would get talked about if Tomlin was not returning for whatever reason in 2026 would be Marcus Freeman, the head coach at Notre Dame. I don't think he would take any other college job. I think he would only consider leaving for an NFL job and a prestigious NFL job at that. And Pittsburgh certainly, I think, would fit that bill.
Yep. And if you want to catch up on that, you can listen to the live stream podcast, which is about an hour and 5 minutes long from Monday night. We have it all wrong, says Jason Chadwell. I know that the focus this week is about Tomlin's future, and rightly so. I also believe a fresh start for him and the Steelers would be a positive for both sides. He says, I want to focus more on Rooney and how he has given Tomlin what seems like a lifetime position. Tomlin can live in his fears when he doesn't have to fear job security. Steeler fans should be eyeing Rooney as this is an ownership problem more than just a coaching problem. He says, Alex, at the end of the season, will you do a hindsight 2020 article offering grades and commentary for the biggest headlines heading into the 2025 season and how they played out? For example, Slay was a huge miss, grade F. Tomlin has an over fascination with name experience, but in reality, Slay couldn't run or tackle worth a lick. And then he says, bonus, should Khan get more criticism for roster construction, or do we think it's more Tomlin calling all the personnel shots there? We kind of just talked about Khan and all like that. It's hard to say Tomlin obviously has his hands in personnel, who he wants to coach, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he has a great amount of influence. The exact dynamics are hard to decipher, but I would imagine that Tomlin has just about as much head influence as any head coach now that Bill Belichick is no longer in the NFL.
All right, and yes, Steeler fans should be eyeing Rooney as this is an ownership problem. This is a complete organizational problem that we're in right now, period. And include in that however many people you want to include in it.
But I think it's fair to say that when it comes to Tomlin, there's only one deciding man in terms of Tomlin's future, other than Tomlin himself, if he ever wanted to walk away. And that man, of course, is Art Rooney II. And point taken on that. It's what Rooney has always known. It's what he's watched growing up, seeing Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher, the team's mantra of don't make the rash decision and have stability and prioritize that over everybody else. And also, I don't think Rooney wants to eat the money potentially if you parted ways, if you fired Mike Tomlin. So there's certainly criticism there. You could argue that for sure. But that's Rooney's nature. It's the upbringing. It's the culture of the family. And there's no way to change that. There's no one firing Art Rooney, obviously.
All right. We'll finish up one more from Greg from Chicago. A glimmer of hope. ? Or am I just crazy? Second time emailer here and long time listener. Is it too much of a stretch to think it's possible the media and overall fan base is overreacting with the whole fire Tomlin thing? He says, look, I've been watching the Steelers all my life religiously, 31 years old, and I've never seen the team play so poorly at points that they have this year. Allowing Buffalo to run on us like that was straight up embarrassing. The team has been super inconsistent this year, etc. No doubt we are at a low point of the season right now. However, the grass may not be greener on the other side if we fire Tomlin. He says, I agree with Dave's comment in the last show that if Tomlin did leave, he would very likely be successful in his next coaching role. Look, I by successful, I don't mean he's going to win a Super Bowl, but I do think Mike Tomlin will continue to win games in the NFL and maybe more than he loses, even if it's by one. But anyway, he says, of which he would be hired for quickly. So why can't he make that success happen in Pittsburgh? In my opinion, Tomlin needs to bring in a real DC who has had success on his own and let him run the defensive room. Of course, Tomlin will have some influence. Hire a consultant to find a great OC as a replacement to Arthur Smith. He says because God knows Tomlin can't pick a good OC on his own, and Tomlin needs to just focus on running the team as a whole, be the great motivator he is, and allow the DC and OC to largely run their rooms. Is there any other team who puts more responsibility on their head coach than the Steelers with Tomlin? He says Tomlin is great for what he is, a leader of men and great football mind, but he needs good supporting cast to win Super Bowls. He says, I think a world exists where the Steelers win out and win 2 playoff games this year, and people will be looking back on all this fire Tomlin stuff and laugh. Are my black and gold glasses on too tight? Maybe, but I believe it. He says, I'll hang up and listen to you guys. You guys are the best in the biz. Go Steelers forever. I'll have what he's having. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate the email. You make some a little bit long there, but is Mike Tomlin a good football mind?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think people will push back and instinctively say no to that, and we don't get to hear about Tomlin too much behind the scenes of the X's and O's element, and obviously what he gets talked about in the media is the leader of men and motivator. But yeah, I think he's a really smart guy. I mean, this guy was about to go to law school before embarking on a football and coaching career. He's done it for a long time. He knows everything inside and out. I think a lot of the relationships he's built over time, not just with the roster, but just his knowledge of the NFL makes him well equipped to understanding how a game is going to go, the contours of a game. Players have talked about that over time. So that is not a popular opinion right now, I know, to share. But yeah, I think he's a very good football mind.
All right, let me throw this at you. Is Mike Tomlin a better leader of men or a better great football mind? Which is he better in?
I mean, we're all talking from the outside here. Of course, if you're putting Tomlin into kind of a coaching bucket of the X's and O's whiz kid, the Sean McVay versus the, I don't know, drill sergeant type of a Bill Belichick versus the quote-unquote players coach, then obviously he's going to fit more into that latter one. His greatest strengths, I think, is that ability of the interpersonal connections with players and being able to relate to them while still being tough and honest and transparent. I know Tomlin has bristled against the notion of a player's coach because it invokes this sort of buddy-buddy, let's all be friends. That's not the relationship that Tomlin has with his players. There's a lot of reality and hard conversations I think he's had with guys over the years. So if you're putting Tomlin into a bucket, yes, his greatest strengths. I think I had this in a mailbag answer. I should bring that back up for a future topic about what were his greatest strengths and weaknesses. But obviously, if you talk about Tomlin big picture, what do you think of Tomlin? You think about not the X's and O's stuff, but I still think he's still a very good football mind. It just doesn't get talked about. It's not the forefront of kind of his greatest strength and what people perceive him to be.
What kind of football mind do you think Art Rooney II has?
I mean, you're asking some questions of stuff that it's hard to really comment on. Obviously, he is not grinding away tape and has the playbook memorized that he could talk about it to some great degree.
If you were the owner, would you? Damn right you would.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a different world. These owners are not the same as the job and hats that you and I wear.
Is that we're in that? Does that lie maybe a problem?
What would it change if Rooney could tell you how exactly to block up an inside zone scheme?
I would not tell the coach how to coach, but it would certainly make differences in personnel decisions and all like that. I'd have my hand heavily in that alongside the GM and all like that. I mean,
but then when do you work the Jerry Jones lineup? From when do you let the coaches coach and
right? But in the off season though, when building this thing together, I damn sure want my hand in it.
I think Rooney has his hand in it. What Rooney does is he makes the grocery list of this is what we need to get for this meal. Because every single time that Rooney talks about in those first interviews in the offseason, the media circuit that he does, he always talks about this is where we struggle, this is where we must get better, not in super detail, but hey, the run defense was bad this year. That's what Rooney talked about coming off this season. So we got to get the run defense to be better. And they go out there and they invest heavily in defensive line and front seven during the NFL draft. So Rooney sets the grocery list, and then Tomlin and Khan and White'll have to actually go buy the ingredients. That's how the system works. I think it's a fine system that is generally works better than either a completely out to nowhere, out to lunch owner that has no involvement with the team and no real connection versus the Jerry Jones type of let's go meddle and basically run the show ourselves. I don't think those models work as effectively as the model that Rooney has. Now, this model's not working perfectly, but in terms of just the overall philosophy, I think it's fine. I don't think Rooney has to be a super in-depth kind of a guy for this team to be successful. This team's been successful in the past without Rooney having to be some sort of like X's and O's brainiac.
All right. I'm not asking for Jerry Jones by any stretch of the imagination because I do think I think that's sickening to have to watch what happens over there. But all right, what else? If Tomlin stays, should they clean house on the coordinators? I obviously think they should. I'm with Greg here that you got to bring people in here where you can be a little more hands off in that area.
Yeah, I mean, these are all good conversations to have. It's hard, and I know that Greg's probably just trying to give some sort of framework, but to say, go hire a consultant to go hire your OC, that's so hard to do as a head coach.
Right.
Just have somebody else go hire it out for me. I get the OC hires have not been good overall, but remember, one reason why Tomlin has so much control is he's the longest tenured active coach, not just in the NFL, but all the professional American sports, the four major ones. Also, is one of the highest paid coaches of any coach in American professional sports. And so when you give that guy that kind of responsibility, that kind of money, you ask him to do a lot. Otherwise, what are you paying him all this money for?
Yeah, but don't tell me about labor pains. I want to see the baby.
No. I know, but that's my point is you're paying Tomlin to run the team, and he should get to run the team. Otherwise, why even have Tomlin? And why are you paying Tomlin $50 million to let everyone else go figure it out? Well, I'm trying to. I think I got myself off track a little bit.
Is he too much of a micromanager, or does that come along with what you just said?
I mean, I think you can evaluate and maybe tweak some things, but as long as Tomlin's here and getting paid all that kind of money. Now, if you want to say that this isn't working and Tomlin's not doing the right job, then you probably want to fire him instead of trying to reduce his role, because I don't know if reducing the role is going to be the exact cure to this thing. To the coordinators, which I think was the question that you asked, I think Austin is gone. I don't know exactly how much that changes if you replace him with some sort of outside DC materially. Does that really change the system too much? It wouldn't appear so, but I guess we'll wait and see. With Arthur Smith, I'm going to let the season play out on that. I know the popular opinion is for him to go, and I get that. I'm kind of debating in my head about do I want Arthur Smith back personally or not? Okay, point taken. If you do fire Arthur Smith, which you would have to do because he's under contract through next year, you're basically changing up this whole roster along with it too, because this roster has been very much built in Arthur Smith's vision of a multi-tight end heavy, less so on receivers, outside zone run scheme. And so you're not just cleaning house in OC, you're cleaning house a lot on the roster. Now, some will say, hey, good, we need it. And that's probably fair in a lot of respects, but also just recognize that because most OCs do not run the Arthur Smith system of 12 and 13 personnel heavy. And if you're firing Arthur Smith, I assume you're not going to bring in an OC with a very similar philosophy. You're going to go in the other direction of let's go back to 11 personnel, kind of throw the ball all over the yard and kind of have a different scheme. So you're getting big roster changes again if you're moving on from Arthur Smith.
All right. Greg from Chicago, second-time emailer. Thank you for that. And Greg,
what is the number one reason for you wanting to fire Arthur Smith? I'm not saying that you're wrong. I just want to hear your process of how do you evaluate the decision on players versus coordinators versus when it's time to go.
Yeah, I just think from a game plan, play design, schematic, it's stale, it's old, it's uncreative. A lot of people say it's had some Matt Canada feel to it and all like that. And if he's the one that's supposed to match, and look, I understand that good offensive coordinators match, create an offensive scheme related, built around the personnel, but I don't know how many times, in his head, I think he has his type of players, his type of scheme, and he tries to bring in those players that best match his scheme and plan more so than, all right, show up on Monday, here's your players, build something around this.
But every OC brings in the guys that fit their scheme. What OC
Sure,
doesn't
but
do that?
to some degree, but it does seem heavily reliant with what with what he's done here.
I think the biggest reason to fire Arthur Smith, if I come to that conclusion, beyond just the overall production or lack thereof, is a lot of the moves that seem to be clearly influenced by Arthur Smith simply have not worked. I think George Pickens was traded not solely because of Arthur Smith. The problems with Pickens existed before Arthur Smith, but they knew that he was not going to work in the Arthur Smith offense. He wasn't going to block. He wasn't going to play hard all the time. Two receivers would not get touches in this offense, and Pickens would get very upset about that and would create more problems. And so it was not going to work in the Arthur Smith system. You got to be able to block and be able to play hard all the time and do that kind of dirty work. And so I think that was certainly a reason that, not that Smith came to the team and said, go trade George Pickens, but he was not going to work in Smith's system. You add Jonnu Smith because of Arthur Smith, because of the very close relationship there. That has not worked. You draft Caleb Johnson for the outside zone scheme. That's what Arthur Smith likes to run. Smith touting that so far has not been working, not giving you value certainly this season. So a lot of big major moves you've made have been related to Arthur Smith, and they've all basically failed. And that would be a reason to say, I'm fine with fitting players to a system, but it's not, these things aren't working. And so we got to just move on, because the guys we're bringing you and the moves we're making to make the system work in your vision are completely floundering and failing in spectacular fashion, and we have to stop that cycle.
All right, in so many words, if it were to come out that Arthur Smith's telling the front office and Mike Tomlin and Omar and Art Rooney to break out a Star Trek term here, damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, and in other words, okay, you're going to trade George Pickens away. What are you giving me here? And you got to go get me somebody else, and them saying, well, look, here's your $50 budget, go get what you can off of that,
I'm not really following.
In other words, they're not giving him good enough groceries to build around.
No, they're giving him exactly what he's wanted, which would be the point of reason why to fire him.
Well, do you think he would have liked a better compliment than what they had at wide receiver after trading away George Pickens?
I mean, in an ideal world, yes, but his offense is tight end based. I mean, he wants to run a 12, 13 personnel. That's why they loaded up on all these tight ends. That's why they traded for Jonnu Smith. That's why they traded away George Pickens, because the offense typically does not support it. So, no, these moves were made to fit the Arthur Smith system, which I'm fine with in principle. I'm fine with an OC bringing in people and running the system as he sees fit in the course of an offseason, especially a second time through. But they've not worked.
Isn't it a failure then that they went the direction that they did and provided him then what you believe are quality tools there, and he wasn't able to make that work?
Yes, that's why I said that would be the reason why I would cite firing Arthur Smith if I come to that conclusion, because you've done everything that you can to run and fit the system for him and made these pretty significant moves to do so, trading George Pickens and trading for Jonnu Smith and drafting Caleb Johnson and probably some other moves we could talk about as well. And they have not worked. And that all, I think, relates back to not Arthur Smith saying do X, Y, and Z, but trying to, you're doing these things for his system. It's very clear on that. And none of those things have worked out at all.
Right. And look, this team, regardless, this team has lacked another wide receiver. And we said that right out of the chute, right after trading George Pickens, right? We understand why George Pickens was traded. And we never questioned George Pickens' talent, but why wasn't more of an effort on everybody's part made to go get, because you need more than just one wide receiver, even in a tight end based offense.
Yeah, because the thought was that you're going to run a lot of tight end personnel out there, and Pat Frymuth and Jonnu Smith will be the guys who can do a lot of the heavy lifting in the pass game. That is number two receiver, star's not going to really work well in this system because the offense won't support it. And they like, the collection of guys of Austin and Roman Wilson and guys that could, work their butt off and block hard and do some of the dirty work. That was kind of the vision. That was the intent. Obviously, it hasn't worked out that way. But just to recap, I'm not firing Arthur Smith because of the scheme necessarily, about the play calls weren't super creative. It's just, the roster that we built in your vision at kind of your behest, either officially or unofficially, spoken or unspoken, has not worked. And we can't keep trying to fit it into your system because it's not been working.
Who do you think? Arthur Smith has had a hand, obviously, right, in Johnny Smith outsnapping Pat Freiermuth by 69 snaps to date, right?
Yes.
All right, that alone.
Right, and those are the reasons why you would say, okay, we've allowed you to try Jonnu Smith, and we basically benched our $12 million per year number 9 paid tight end who's been really productive for us in the past for this Jonnu Smith guy that's done nothing for our offense. And those are the things we sit there and say, yeah, we're gonna have to make a change. If that's the direction that you go, that to me is the clearest and most obvious and best reason to fire Arthur Smith.
All right. Well, we'll see how. Do you think they will fire Arthur Smith?
Again, I wait for the whole season to play out, because what if the offense, unlikely as it is, just goes on a tear these last 5 games and turns it around and they're just putting up 30 points in bunches? It's a whole different conversation. If the team gets shut out every single game the rest of the season, the conversation becomes more obvious. But as I sit here today, no, I think he comes back in 2026.
What if it's just a continuation of what we've seen so far this season, which is the most likely outcome?
Depends exactly what it looks like, but I will still say if it's about, it depends. Are we talking like the Bills game every single week, or the Bears game, or just a general? It's
the general.
Pretty bad.
3 yards in a cloud of dust in the passing game, and basically 4 yards in a cloud of dust in the run game.
I still think he comes back is kind of my stance right now. I'll let you know if that changes. I'm not saying that I'm advocating for that. Again, I'm not making opinions until the season ends on anybody in terms of coaching, but that's my belief of what will happen. I think Austin is gone.
Okay.
And I think you're going to see a lot of coaching staff changes across the board in the staff. I mentioned that I think Monday, Pittsburgh goes through cycles, either players or coaches. This past year, a lot of personnel turnover, not much with the coaching staff. 2 years ago, we had 7 coaching staff changes. I think we're going to go see a bunch of staff changes across the board. Coordinators, I think Austin's gone. I think Smith stays for his final year. Plus, they don't fire coaches mid-contract. Pittsburgh, that's just not how they operate, right or wrong, and often wrong. They just, Canada was the exception. And Canada got a 30-year. So I think Smith will too, as of right now.
All right. That's about all we have for this week here. And Aaron Rodgers will speak today. Cam Hayward, I think, speaks today, right?
No, I think that's today. Is that tomorrow? I think it's tomorrow.
Okay, maybe that's tomorrow. All right, but we know Aaron Rodgers speaks today, so we'll be covering that on the site. All right, within all that, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Hey, Greg, once again, Greg from Chicago. If the Steelers win out and win 2 playoff games this year, make sure to email us again and say you told us so. Okay.
Absolutely.
Follow us on Twitter at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. I think Alex has a new cat too. Have you named it yet, or should we throw out suggestions for? Or are you going to name that Trevor? It's a girl, so you can't name it Trevor, right? Should we throw out?
Okay, yeah, right.
Should we throw out suggestions for? Get suggestions for Alex's cat's name?
I'm open. I'm open to practice changes. I'm open to cat name changes as well. We do not have a name right now. If anyone has any suggestions how to get this cat into a cat carrier for the vet next week, she is a stray. She is very scared, hiding behind my dryer in my laundry room right now. I don't know how that's going to work. So if anyone has any suggestions, I could very much use them.
Tuna fish.
The food is not going to be enough to get her, I think, into the cat carrier. So, but yeah, anyone who wants to come over and help or give me some suggestions, Dave, come on over. Let's get this cat in the cat carrier.
Yeah, let me jump on a plane there real quick.
All
right. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.